All right, let's talk Sophia's home birth story. So I just had my third baby, first girl, 12 weeks ago as I'm recording this, and she's amazing and such a beautiful blessing to our family. And today I'm just really excited and eager to share the story of when she was born. And I've actually tried to record this today already like 4 or 5 times. It's just me and her today while the boys are at preschool right now. And Adam's at work and she won't sleep. Like she keeps waking up. So anyway, I'm hoping she naps long enough for me to get to tell all this to you. So if you missed last week's episode, I shared about my journey to having a home birth after a C-section just 16 months before. And I talk about finding a midwife, choosing to try for a VBAC at home, behind the scenes of my pregnancy, how I prepared for birth, and a lot of other things. And so you don't need that episode to get this one. But if you are thinking like, wait, I want to hear more about how you decide to pick a home birth, how'd you decide to try for a VBAC, which stands for vaginal birth after cesarean? You might be wondering, what was your pregnancy like? How did you prep for birth? How did you get past fears? How did you find an HBAC supportive midwife, which that means home birth after cesarean? So anyway, if you have those kind of questions, that episode will be a good one to have first. And that's episode 318 of the Breakthrough Brand podcast, right before this one. So just know that's where I share all of that kind of context and answer those questions. So anyway, I love birth stories though, y'all. I love listening to them. I also love sharing mine. I shared my 2 boys' birth stories on my podcast too, and I'll link to those episodes in the show notes if you want to listen to those later. And I know many of you listening, you're like, yes, I remember Colin's birth story. I remember Ethan's birth story. And if you remember any of the little details, even just like one little thing from those, then it's certainly going to make this story feel so full circle, because those births were both beautiful and amazing and 2 of the absolute best days of my entire life, while also having hard moments and big switches where things did not go as planned, while still being the births they were supposed to be. But like when you take those into context, I feel like this birth of Sophia's feels so full circle. But anyway, for me, these birth episodes are some of my favorite episodes I've ever recorded. Actually, the favorite episodes I've ever recorded this podcast. And I've even re-listened to them myself. Like I've listened to Colin's recently on his 4th birthday and Ethan's on his 1st birthday. So I see them as a family treasure for us and also a way for me to share with you guys and hopefully help other moms. In addition to that, I see birth stories as a way to encourage you in your faith in God and just show how God works in so many mysterious ways. I believe that birth is very spiritual and sacred, no matter where you are giving birth or how your birth goes. I believe God's there and present in it. And that's been so evident for me, like seeing how God works with all 3 of my baby's births. So I share these stories not just because birth is fun and beautiful and interesting often to hear the stories of, but I share these stories as testimonies to God's faithfulness. And I'm going to get into that even more at the end of this episode. So whether you're like, oh, I love birth stories, or maybe you're pregnant yourself trying to prepare, maybe you are interested in the idea of a home birth, or maybe you're like, you just enjoy this podcast and you like hearing personal update type stories. Thank you. But whatever boat you kind of fit into, I hope regardless what brought you here, that you're going to enjoy this episode. I believe that there's going to be something in here to encourage you, give you a word of advice, give you a little time of enjoyment, just hearing an interesting story. So anyway, thank you for being here. Let's get into it. Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, an online educator for entrepreneurs, website designer, wife, boy mom, and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want to dive deep into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a sustainable business that fits your unique lifestyle while standing out in a crowd, then you are in the right place. I created a multiple 6-figure a year business in my early 20s, and now in my 30s, I'm still running that successful multiple 6-figure a year business on just part-time hours now as a working mom. I'm here to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning, because I believe that the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, website design, personal branding, mindset, time management as a busy parent, scalable and passive income, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. Okay, guys, so let's get into Sophia's first story. So I'm going to start us off actually at the end of my pregnancy, impatiently waiting on labor to start. So I was trying for a home birth VBAC, which is also called an HBAC, which stands for home birth after cesarean, meaning that you had a C-section previously with a previous birth, and now you're trying not only for a vaginal birth after a C-section, but a vaginal birth at home called an HBAC. So my C-section with my son, Ethan, had happened just 16 months before this. And I had a C-section with him because he was breech after actually being in labor. And then they told me I had to go have a C-section because I couldn't give birth to a breech baby vaginally in the hospital. So that was like the context that I was coming into this birth with. And something I did this pregnancy that I had never done before to this extent was type out a list of prayers and then share it with people who are close to me. And this felt super vulnerable to do. And I want to start with telling this because these prayers were all answered by God during this birth. But it felt really vulnerable to do this, especially when I already felt very vulnerable trying for a home birth after my previous non-straightforward, not easy birth experiences. I had a lot of like, who am I to think I should have a home birth? Like, I think home birth is safe. I think it's great for some people, but I felt a little bit like, I really want a home birth. I feel like God's leading me to this type of birth, but like, who am I to think it'll go smoothly? So I had a lot of vulnerable feels about home birth, which is actually why publicly I kept it private that I was even planning a home birth. So I was shy to tell people, even some family members, that I wanted a VBAC or a home birth because I did not want to be met with their fears or scrutiny. So I kept the decision close to home, but I did want people's prayers who I had told this plan to, and again, felt super vulnerable though. But I sent out a list of prayers to some family members, actually made it in a ClickUp doc, and then had like an external link I sent to people. But I sent to some family members and some close friends, just asking them if they think of it to pray for these specific things. And I also sent that same list to my midwife, Aubrey, and my doula, V. And Adam worked on the list too with me, and we both liked these are the things we were praying over together. And we liked the idea of sending the list out to people, which again, just something I hadn't done before. And I always ask people like, hey, pray for birth to go well, but I'd never been like, hey, here are very specific things to pray for. So I printed out that list too. I had it pinned in our bathroom by the mirror where I'd see it every day and be reminded to pray. And it is a list of 13 things, which I'm actually going to read at the end of this episode. But it was crazy to me to see that, the numbers of this, but 13 things of prayer. And she was actually born on the 13th of July. So very cool. And I'm someone who really loves journaling. So in addition to the statement of like, pray for this thing, like this is one thing to pray for, like for, a VBAC to go well, for safety and things like that. I also journaled out longer prayers about each thing in a journal starting at 38 weeks pregnant. And I love journaling things for my kids. Like I love all the baby book type stuff, the baby calendar, like that's my thing. I love it. But also for each child, something I did for Colin, I did it for Ethan, and now for Sophia. But I buy a plain lined journal, just like a regular journal with a cover that I feel like matches their gender and the vibe of their nursery or something, and I buy that for them when they're born. And then I write in it and I tape photos in it. And the plan is that throughout their life, I write them letters about what they're like at each age and then give it to them at some point later. It's just fun for me to journal in that way. So anyway, for Colin and Ethan, both of their journals I bought after they were born. And then for Sophia, I actually started hers in pregnancy. And it starts with these prayers for her birth. And I wanted to write the prayers, like me praying out this list basically somewhere where it would be like a keepsake. So that's why I felt like I wanted to do it in her specific baby journal. But it felt so powerful to me to pray these big prayers and really just talk to God about my fears, my hopes, my anxiety, my waiting at the end of birth, all of it. And it's cool actually to read back. I wrote out 11 like journal entry style, like multiple pages of prayers in her journal. And it's just cool to see, like reading through it, like, wow, God really did answer all this. He answered all 13 things on this list and all the details written into these 11 like longer prayers in my journal. But I share all this to say, pray for your birth. I'm starting there. Pray for your birth. Pray for your pregnancy, and God cares about your pregnancy and birth. And after Sophia was born, I was talking to my doula, Adam and I were at our like postpartum appointment with her about her take on the birth and, her experiences. She was telling us things she knows that we did and all of that. And one thing she told me and Adam that was really meaningful was how powerful she thought that prayer list was. And her just knowing how diligently Adam and I were both praying over this birth. But she told me this, and I'm going to quote her because it was very meaningful to me and I think a good word for all of us. But she told me, I've been a doula for 10 years, and I can count on one hand the number of women who have ever sent me a list of things to pray for with their birth. More women need to know the power of prayer with birth. And she was just especially struck by that and said how she had never had anyone really send her a prayer list, but she wishes more of her moms would, because she, as their doula, wants to pray with them about their birth, right? And her name is Vierge White. She goes by V, but I'll link to her website in the blog post, and also my midwife, Aubrey McMillan's website in the blog for this episode. But anyway, that was just a huge way I prepared for this home birth that was not doing like curb walking or labor inducing videos on YouTube or going to the chiropractor or anything like that, but was just talking to God and journaling and asking others to pray for us on our behalf too. So anyway, if you've ever thought about sending out a prayer list to people relating to birth things, I say go for it. Again, I'm going to read mine at the end of this episode. So I started doing all that prayer stuff and writing out the prayers at 38 weeks pregnant, which ended up being about 3 weeks before Sofia would ultimately be born. And in the last few weeks, like the last, I guess like 3-ish weeks of labor, I would have Braxton Hicks at times where I thought like, oh, this could be it. Maybe it's going to pick up and be labor. And it always fizzled. And that happened to me so many times, guys. And waiting at the end of labor is just so hard. I had it in my head that Sofia would probably be born 40 weeks-ish, like before that, because Colin was born at 41 weeks with an induction. Okay, so that's a long time, right? That's ended up being more like when Sofia was born. But Ethan, my second, I went to spontaneous labor with him at 40 weeks and 2 days. And, people say each baby comes a little sooner. So in my mind, I thought like pre-40 weeks would make sense since Ethan was 40 and 2 days. Or on my due date, perhaps it would be, but nope, it was 40 and 6 days that she ultimately was born. But right around 40 weeks, okay, so like here's the kind of start of all the labor things, right? I've been having Braxton Hicks a lot, always fizzled out. I had so many times where I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be it. Better gear up for birth, and it would fizzle out. But right around 40 weeks, my son Ethan got really, really sick. And the sickest he's ever been his entire life. Okay. He's, almost 16 months old at this point. And he ultimately ran the highest fever he's ever had in his life. So I take him to the pediatrician twice that week. Okay. I'm 40 weeks pregnant. Take him to the pediatrician twice, almost to the ER even because of this scary high fever. And turns out he has some various virus, we're not sure what, and a double ear infection. And again, keep in mind, I'm 40 weeks pregnant with 2 children already. I was emotional. I was over it. I was exhausted. I was worried, sick about Ethan's health. And I get sick after that. Then Adam gets sick too with whatever this virus was. And when I get sick again, I'm over 40 weeks pregnant at this point. I actually thought the sickness at first was early labor signs. But at the same time, I felt so ill that I was like, if I went into labor now, I would struggle. Like, I don't think I could literally give birth right now. But like, maybe these are like signs of early labor coming on. My midwife and doula both thought like, hey, you're just sick. And I think I just wanted it to be labor because I was so eager for things to get started. I was tired of waiting. But at the same time, with Ethan being sick, I was concerned about labor starting because basically I was super pregnant, but also with a sick, sad toddler to take care of. So that final week waiting for her was so hard. I cried a lot. I felt like I couldn't manage my life well. I was stressed out, and it felt like nothing was really working and that I was going to be pregnant forever and that Ethan would never get better. So just being honest, that's kind of where I was at. And that's what life was like from around like the end of 39 weeks all the way until she was born at 41 weeks almost. And the 2 days before she was born is when I would say like things really improved. My spirits improved. Ethan got well, all of that. And I felt like ready to go into labor well, but before that, it was just really hard. And I'm not one of those women who has like beautiful patience waiting on labor to start. I know and understand like, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen and it's all God's plan and in God's timing. But I do end up just feeling so ready and eager and not patient. And this happened to me each time at the end of pregnancy with Colin and Ethan too. I'm just like not pretty in the waiting. I'm like, let's get this thing going. I'm like ready to like start running the marathon, so to speak, that is birth. And I think waiting on labor to start is like both weirdly fun in some ways, like waiting on spontaneous labor, but again, like mentally exhausting of the like, is this it every single time? So Ethan's sick, having Braxton Hicks over, on and off all the time. And towards the end of pregnancy at 2 different times in that like final 2 weeks, I did get cervical exams with our midwife, Aubrey, and which I had all my appointments in my house. So she did 2 different cervical exams, and those are both really encouraging. So my last cervical exam with Aubrey, when I was 40 weeks and 2 days, I was 4 to 5 centimeters dilated. And that was also the day I took Ethan to the doctor with 104 fever later that day. So just a lot happening. But at that appointment, again, 40 weeks and 2 days, so just 4 days away from when she was going to be born. But being 4 to 5 centimeters and dilated, but not in labor, just felt crazy to me because with Colin, when I got induced, I was only 1 centimeter dilated. And then with Ethan, when I was in very intense labor, went to the hospital to triage after having been in labor for about 5 hours, I was only 3 centimeters dilated. Okay. So that was my past experiences. So to be 4 to 5 centimeters when labor had not started yet, I was like, whoa, okay. Like that's really exciting. That's new. That's different. That feels like a good sign for like how labor is going to go when it ultimately starts. And at that appointment, my midwife, Aubrey, told me like, she checks me. She's like, you're 4 to 5 centimeters. Wow. Like this seems like it's going to be fast. So she told me, call her as soon as I felt labor starting because she thought it would be really quick based on how dilated I was. And I remember when she said that, I literally laughed because I was like, I appreciate that you think that, but also with my past long labors, I feel like there's no way this is going to be fast by anyone's standards. Like that was kind of where my mindset was at. Like, I'm like, I hope you're right. But I think you're wrong. And I feel like that's not going to be like fast just because that's never been my experience. And turns out, as you're going to hear, Aubrey was very much right that like things were just really fast, like when labor actually started and my body was doing a lot of the work before going into labor. So that's the thing too. I would just encourage you if you are pregnant and waiting at the end of pregnancy through that really hard time where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just so ready to go. The Braxton Hicks and the start-stop contractions, prodromal labor, like all of those things is your body actually working. And it might end up meaning that labor will ultimately be shorter when it does start. So in my planning for a home birth VBAC, I had so many doubts throughout pregnancy after I'd made that decision, which I didn't make the decision until I was over 20 weeks along. I talk about that on the episode before this one, but I had a lot of doubts and I would frequently be hit with thoughts like, who am I to think I can have a home birth after my past birth experiences? Am I crazy for trying this? And I felt just like not ready at times and just doubting myself, even though it was something I really wanted. And something I realized in all those moments of doubt, and it occurred to me on repeat on and off, it was just a really beautiful thing for me that I want to share is how similar preparing for a home birth was to starting my business. And it might be like, what, Elizabeth, those things have nothing in common because on paper they don't. And for some people, they don't have anything in common. But for me, it had so much beautiful overlap that I think God was just like demonstrating to me during pregnancy. So when I started out my business, it was 10 years ago now, almost 10 years ago. And I was 22 going on 23. I was fresh out of college. I did not feel prepared or qualified to be a business owner. Yet that is what I wanted and what I was trying for. And it's the same feelings for birth. I had so many of those same feelings I felt 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago at the same time, come up for me of a just big, like, I am not qualified for this. Other people are, not me though. This is for someone else, not for me, even though I want it to be for me. So back when I was starting my business, there were many people that made me feel unqualified, like many interactions and things that happened that led me to feel that way. Also the voice in my own head leading me to feel that way. But there were also people in my life who believed in me when I couldn't and didn't believe in myself. Okay. And that's what happened to me with birth too. But 2 that stick out to me back then in particular, and I've shared this on the podcast before if you've been a listener for a while, but my dad and my husband, Adam. And my dad has now passed away, but he was truly the biggest believer in my business and me really my whole life. And I felt that from him in all the interactions. And I felt that when I did the crazy thing of quitting a really nice, stable job that I just started, that he never had any doubts that it would be good and that things would work out and that I had what it took. And the same thing goes for Adam. My mother too was really supportive in all of that. So when I didn't believe in myself back then, or when someone else would make a comment like, oh, you seem too young to be starting a business, I often fell back on their confidence in me of like, I have these people in my life who like really believe that this is the right move and that this is going to work out. And with my birth, I felt this too. So my birth team just really believed in this for me when I couldn't believe in myself. And I can get emotional talking about this. I know I'm not even to the actual birth story. I promise I'm getting there really soon. But yeah, with my birth, I just felt this too. And so my birth team was just amazing. And that includes Aubrey, my midwife, but also my doula V, my pelvic floor physical therapist, Ashley, my chiropractor, Molly, my mother-in-law, Jan, who took care of the kids while I was in labor, like all of them. I just felt it from them that they truly believed I was going to have a normal, happy, healthy home birth experience. And I still remember at my last appointment with Ashley, who's my pelvic floor physical therapist. She's absolutely amazing. +1 pelvic floor PT. I'll link to her, that business in the show notes and her info. But she and I had so many conversations at my appointment surrounding this birth, my fears, my nerves, all of it. And I just remember, and I think it was probably our last appointment, but her just telling me, I just know this is going to work out and be amazing for you. And I have so much confidence in you. And I'm so eager to hear the story once she's born. And I just felt that from her. Like she really didn't doubt that the home birth would happen and be smooth and that everything would go according to my hopes and God's plan. And obviously, other people's belief in you doesn't replace the need for you to trust God and believe in yourself and prepare and all those sorts of things. But I just cannot emphasize enough the power of having a supportive birth team who's not tolerating what you're trying to do, but is supportive and fully believing in what you're trying to do. And when I say birth team, I really do mean everyone. Like sometimes people think of your birth team as like just the midwife or doctor and your doula, if you have a doula, and that's like it. But your birth team is much bigger than that. So like the people you see for appointments like pelvic floor PT or the chiropractor, your husband, your doula and your midwife or your doctor, the person who's going to be watching your other kids. Like I said, my mother-in-law was that for me. Even your birth photographer, okay, is part of your birth team. And I was just beyond blessed with a supportive team that believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And I really do. I talked to Adam about this throughout pregnancy when I felt these moments of like big doubt and then being like, man, today at pelvic floor PT, Ashley was just so encouraging to me. Or like, you won't believe what Aubrey said at this appointment. Like, I just know that like she really believes that we're going to have an awesome home birth. And God was just trying to teach me and show me things through those constant parallels and the deja vu moments I got thinking back to the time of starting my business 10 years ago. So I just wanted to share that because that was really significant for me. And I do think like having that supportive team, regardless of the kind of birth you are having, is just so, so huge. So back to when labor was starting though. So when I was 40 weeks and 4 days pregnant, so just 2 days away, really one night away from when Sofia was going to be born, Ethan was still as sick as ever. And he normally goes to a preschool 3 days a week. Colin does too, but he was feeling awful. And so I kept him home with me that day, just me and him. Again, 40 weeks and 4 days pregnant. Adam was at work, Colin was at preschool. And I was still feeling tired from having been kind of sick, but feeling a little better myself and feeling defeated about labor ever starting. And my doula V really gave me like the encouragement I needed that day to stop anticipating labor and just be with Ethan. She was like, stop doing stuff to try to get labor to start. Stop anticipating, just know it's going to come when it's time and just be with your sweet boy and have a sweet one-on-one day with him. And y'all, I could cry about it, but that day was so sweet. It was just me and him all day. We went and walked around Target, which is something I actually did with Colin when I was waiting on Ethan to be born. And we stayed home and rested and played together. And it was a sweet day, just me and my 16-month-old toddler who still feels like a baby to me in a lot of ways. And that day, again, felt really sweet for me of like just letting go of being like, oh, like I'm so ready for the start. Just like letting go of that and just being with my sweet boy. And so he got a lot better that day. And then the next day he woke up normal and woke up healthy. And again, that was 2 days before Sofia would be born. So that was on a Friday. And then on Saturday, 40 weeks and 5 days pregnant, Ethan woke up and stopped having a spiked fever and he seemed like himself again. He was eating normally, no fever. He was playing. Me and Adam both felt more well and normal. Adam still felt a little sick. Colin never got sick during any of this. And I still just remember so vividly that morning being able to be like, I've given birth to 3 children in the US without ever having traditional health insurance. And no, we didn't just pay those huge medical bills out of pocket each time. We found an affordable healthcare solution we truly love, Christian Healthcare Ministries. CHM is a faith-based alternative to health insurance at half the cost. You can enroll at any time and join a proven faith-based solution that's both reliable and affordable. My family has been members for over 5 years now, and CHM shared all expenses for all 3 of my children's births from C-section to home birth. They even shared things like pelvic floor therapy and lactation consulting, which were both such huge blessings for birth prep and postpartum. And outside of birth, we've had our hard moments of emergency room visits and surgeries, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. I seriously just can't recommend CHM enough. It's not just financial support, it's spiritual support when you need it most. Learn more at elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. That link is in the show notes too. And if you want the full story, Adam and I did a whole episode on our experience. So check out episode 305 of this podcast. Again, that's elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to today's show. Okay, I'm taking a deep breath of relief. Like, my family is well. Things are going okay. Everything's going to be okay. And I vividly remember just a weight being lifted off my chest to like have a normal day. We had a really normal and enjoyable Saturday as a family. We went out to breakfast, which is something I felt like we could not have done in the past days with Ethan being so sick. We went to my in-laws' house. I rested during the boys' nap times. They both like took good nap and rest times. And then that afternoon and evening, like many afternoons and evenings prior, I was having contractions that were super mild that I thought, this could be the thing. But again, I've been thinking that for like 2 weeks that it could be the thing, and then it never was. And so then that night though, during the boys' bedtime routines, I'm doing Colin's routine, Adam's doing Ethan's bedtime, and I got anxious again. I got anxious this time about being so pregnant and feeling like things felt a little off with Sofia. So I was using the fetal heart tones Doppler. I had my own. I used that to listen to Sofia's heartbeat. And something really great about this pregnancy experience was that I finally learned how to effectively use a Doppler. So I had bought one of those when I was pregnant with Colin. So like at this point, over 4 years ago, and I didn't use it much because it would always stress me out of not being able to find his heartbeat or being like, I don't even know what I'm looking for. Like, what range is even normal? Is that my heartbeat? Is that his? Is that the placenta noise? Like, I don't know. And so this pregnancy though, my midwife really showed me how to use the Doppler well at appointments, and she would use hers and we sometimes use mine so she could show me how to use it, how to like know, even how to figure out like what Sophia's position was with the Doppler, how to know what Sophia's normal range was. Like, I was very aware of like using the Doppler well. So I was using my Doppler and I didn't love what I was seeing. And I think some of that was just my anxiety, but I didn't love what I was seeing. And so I was recording videos for Aubrey where she could, hear the Doppler and see the numbers. And I texted them to her. Again, such a great thing about the home birth midwifery care I received from Aubrey's, I was able to just text her and ask questions about stuff like this. So she watched those videos though and told me that she was not concerned about what she was seeing, but she wants to ease my anxiety. So we scheduled an NST, which stands for a non-stress test, at our house for in the morning. So she was like, I'll come over Sunday morning and we can do an NST. And that was so helpful to me because I was feeling just so crazy anxious. I had some crying in that time of like doing the boys' baths and bedtimes where I was just like, oh, I'm feeling so anxious. And I think looking back, and even in the moment, I realized this a little bit, but a big part of why I felt so anxious is that this was the longest I'd been pregnant without an induction starting. So I was 40 weeks and 5 days with Colin when I got induced. And then with Ethan, he was born like right after his due date. So just like to be 40 and 5 days, I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Like I've never been this pregnant without someone taking me to the hospital and doing things to help get the baby out. So I basically felt like worried about Sofia. I was like worried, is she okay? Am I going too far? Am I too pregnant? And even though like I felt all those things, even though I was having a healthy pregnancy and no one else was concerned about me being almost 41 weeks, like Aubrey was not concerned, not trying to rush things. My doula wasn't concerned. Like no one was concerned except for me. I was, and I started just getting concerned. And so I was kind of stressing out, and texting Aubrey, about all this. And in our texting, she ended up asking me if I had time to talk on the phone with her. Again, just amazing care with my midwife. Like I just love Aubrey so much. And I feel like she was such a huge part of me just having a great birth and great pregnancy experience. But I loved that like she was someone who knew me and not only knew my health history and about my pregnancy, but also just like knew me as a person and my anxieties and my feels around this birth. And Aubrey is a VBAC mom herself too. Her first birth was a C-section. And then her second was a home birth. So she had a home birth VBAC, and her first birth that was a C-section felt kind of like a mix between my C-section and my hospital vaginal birth with Colin. So anyway, my whole pregnancy, I just felt like she really got me. And she got me even with this phone call. So she asked if we can talk, and we talked on the phone. And I cried about my nerves. She reminded me of things like how I was having a very healthy pregnancy, and she did think labor was going to start really soon, and like it was going to happen for me, and everything's going to be okay. And she so, just like I was saying, believed for me in having a beautiful birth. And she told me on that call, I just cannot wait to see your face when you meet Sofia for the first time of your home birth, and I know it's going to happen really soon. And I knew she meant it, like all the other times she had told me that. And she reminded me that my body's doing work. You're already 4 to 5 centimeters dilated. And she thinks that once I can calm down and just feel really safe all the way with how Ethan's doing, that labor's going to kick off. And I tried to tell him, I do feel like Ethan's fine. I know he's fine. I feel good now. But I think I was still just holding tight fist even in how I was feeling about birth. I'm so ready for the start. I had so much anxiety and nerves. So this is the part that gets funny though. On our phone call, she says, do you have any wine in your house? And I was like, yeah, actually I have this bottle in the fridge of white wine that was never opened. I bought it for my sister-in-law when she was visiting because it's her favorite wine, but we never opened it. And she says, great. Okay. I want you to pour yourself an actual glass of wine. Baby's going to be okay. Take it to the bath, take a relaxing bath, listen to some birth meditations. I'm going to send you a few I think that will be helpful. And then after that, I want you to go do something else relaxing, maybe watch Friends with Adam and have some ice cream. Okay. She knew that Adam and I had been rewatching Friends. And so she tells me these midwife's orders. And so literally as we were on the phone, I'm uncorking this bottle of wine and I'm pouring myself a glass in my pretty wine glass. And I was like, yes, I love my midwife's orders. I followed her exact steps. So I took my wine. I had a wonderful bath. I got out some more tears. I prayed a ton. I listened to some YouTube videos that was scripture being read about fears that wasn't even related specifically to birth, though it was helpful to me. And I had that bath. I had my whole glass of wine. And then me and Adam watched an episode of Friends while I was on my birth ball. And hilariously, we watched the one where Rachel has her baby, which is one of my favorite episodes because I think it's hilarious. So I got a lot of good laughs out. Friends is a good, just laugh it out, good, comedic relief for me in a moment like this. And I had ice cream too. So I'm just doing it all. Okay. And all this time I was having the mildest contractions that I was just praying would pick up into something more. I didn't even really tell Adam about the contractions because I was just so over it and didn't want to scare the contractions away. As it felt like I kept doing all these other times. But this point, I wasn't necessarily expecting it to turn into anything, but I was hopeful it would, right? And the contractions were really mild, just as mild as they were every other time this had happened. So I went to bed as normal, anticipating labor the same amount as I had every other night. And then at 1 a.m., I woke up to contractions that were able to wake me up. And I truly believe that phone call with Aubrey, of her just encouraging me and telling me it's going to happen and her giving me advice that helped me chill out is what finally put me into labor. So when this starts, I really did feel like I knew it was the real thing. Finally, I just were laying in bed being like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm so excited. I was crying tears of joy level, excited that it was go time. It is finally here. I'm ready. Let's do this. And about 30 minutes later, I texted my doula. That was the real thing. Adam woke up sometime in there. I tried not to deliberately wake him up until I felt like he needed to be woken up. But I texted my doula that, hey, I think it's the real thing. And I was pretty certain to her in the text that hey, V, this is it. But then I also said that I was able to really rest a lot between contractions. And I was literally during the contractions, even still laying down. So just trying to sleep through them is what I was doing basically. But I still texted her anyway. And I remembered from my labor with Ethan that something I wanted to do this time differently was wait as long as I could to really acknowledge the contraction, so to speak, because in Ethan's labor, and this is common for your first time to go into spontaneous labor, but with Ethan's going into spontaneous labor, I was just so thrilled when labor started, also around that same time of around 1 a.m., that I just immediately started using all my labor coping techniques. I got up, got on the birth ball, was doing stair walking things to help him engage and all of that kind of stuff. I just really went for it at 1 a.m. when labor ended up being a lot longer. And I was so tired by the time my C-section came around from having started so intensely then. So I remember thinking in hindsight, I should have tried to rest longer. So this time when it started, I was even with my excitement, I was just trying to rest. So I tried to literally sleep through it all and basically sleep between contractions. But I did end up tracking my contractions some in the contraction timing app that my midwife wanted me to use. So I did that for like 20 minutes maybe, and then I would go back to like laying down between them and basically just working through my contractions from laying in our bed. I also was hydrating as much as I could. I ate a protein bar. Like I'm trying to get physically ready as if I'm about to like do a marathon basically while resting too. And for a while, I really was able to rest or do something else between contractions. So like I helped Adam with preparing our bed for birth with the birth sheets and the waterproof liner from our birth kit. I packed my hospital bag the rest of the way, which I want to talk about that real quick. I was so prepped up for this birth with like all the home birth supplies and all the things like organized in our room on a shelf. And that was really important to me to like feel like I knew where things were. And I enjoyed that like nesting for a home birth. And that worked well with my personality. But I feel like for some women who are having a home birth, it is comforting to them to not have a hospital birth bag really packed well. And just to be like, okay, like if I have to go to the hospital, I'm going to throw everything I need into a bag and I'll go to the hospital if I need to. And until then, I'm not packing things up. You got to know your personality though. And for me personally, it really helped me mentally to have a completely ready to go hospital bag packed up just in case. So I actually had a printed list that was hung on our wall by the birth shelf. That was my hospital bag checklist. And so it had everything with a check mark beside it that I already had put in the bag before labor started. Like I just put that stuff in there towards the end of pregnancy. So I knew what was in there already. And that was things like Sofia's receiving outfit and her like nameplate, toiletries for me, makeup remover, toothbrush, extra contacts, face wash, phone charger, some snacks already, toiletries for Adam, things like that. And then I had a second list on that same page that was my put in bag when labor starts just in case list, which was things like clothes for me and Adam, my makeup bag, things like that. And then I had a final part of the list that was things to add to the bag if the transfer actually was happening. And this list was longer, and that included things from our birth shelf. So anyway, that was how I handled that. So if you're having a home birth, consider that like a possible way to handle that part of things. But that was really important to me to make the list and plan with confidence, like believing in myself and believing in God for a home birth, but also having a good backup plan. Because for me, in the event of a transfer, I don't want to be in a hospital in postpartum having no change of clothes or wanting to brush my teeth and not having a toothbrush, or really wishing that like Adam be like, he really wants a stack, but we didn't bring any. So like I wanted to be prepared. So again, if you're planning for a home birth, I can't recommend enough doing list systems like what I'm describing. And I can put a screenshot from my phone in the blog for this episode in case it's helpful for anyone to see. We also had a note on the notes app that Adam and I were both shared on that was a when labor starts things to do. And I made it, I shared it with Adam. We went over it before birth. And so we started working through that, and it had things like people to text. Like we needed to text my mother-in-law that labor had started. We needed to make sure we text the birth photographer, Elizabeth, and text my midwife and doula, and things like getting the bed prepped for birth, prepping the hose with our shower for the birth pool, even though it wouldn't be filled up yet, because yes, I was wanting to have a birth in the water. And originally, when I made this list, I was anticipating like, I'm not going to help Adam with this because like when labor starts, it's going to like be so intense that like he's going to be sprinting to do this on his own and I won't be like helping him. But I ultimately felt so good between contractions that I like wanted to help. So when we did all the things together, and I was even actively texting people on my phone and telling them that labor had started, I felt good enough to do that. And that was something that was different for me too with this birth. With Colin's birth, I did not tell people when I went into labor. This time I did text a few friends and I texted family members to let them know that labor had started and to be praying. And I think in my head, though, we had a lot longer to go before she was born. The contractions were intense-ish, but not in between them. And in between them, I felt like I got like a really real break. I even felt good enough to stand in my bathroom and do my makeup and brush my teeth and like kind of get ready for the day. So like that is how fine I felt. And I can even see looking back through photos and texts, like I texted my sweet aunt, whose name is Suzanne. I texted her. She wanted to know as soon as I went into labor and when labor had started. So I texted her to let her know at 1:30. I also texted Aubrey and V around then. And basically I just had like 5 hours where it all runs together. I was laboring with Adam in our bedroom. I never left the room, which I think was like a thing in birth that definitely helped things progress quickly. I left the room once before Sophia was born, but generally I was like staying in the room and just staying put. From like 1 to 5 a.m., contractions were getting closer and closer together, but generally staying anywhere from 5 to 10 10 minutes apart. And I was having what's called double peaking contractions, where I might have like a 10-minute break, but then all of a sudden I'd have two super close together that were like 3 minutes apart. So very, very sporadic. And worth adding here, like we have so much data we use, right? When a woman's in labor, like cervical dilation, effacement, how far apart contractions are, how long she's been in labor, all of those things, but they really don't tell you anything on their own. But together, when you combine them with how the mother's acting, how she's feeling through the contractions, can tell you like how close birth might be. But too often in a medical setting, though, everything just is about dilation. Like that's it. We're checking dilation constantly. If you're dilated not enough, we think it's really far away. If you're dilated more, we think you're about to have your baby. But you really can dilate slow and then all of a sudden be at 10 and ready to push. You just never know. So I feel like for me and Adam, as we're like communicating to our birth team about like when to come, I was going off of how I felt through these contractions. I didn't know my dilation, and things were really sporadic. Like the spacing of the meeting was sporadic. So I was going more off of how I was feeling as I worked through them. But I really was just like so strangely fine, which is such, again, like an answer to prayers about this birth, that I was able to feel good and feel lighthearted. But looking through my phone camera roll, Adam took some videos of me around 5 a.m. and I was still smiling and able to laugh and be lighthearted. Like I was saying, like, take my picture. Oh, let me see it. Let's take a selfie together. Like that's kind of where it was. And also in those 5-ish hours, I used my own fetal heart tones Doppler a few times to check on Sofia. Again, because my midwife had kind of taught me, like, here's what to watch for and here's what's normal. And she didn't tell me I needed to do any of that. I just felt like I wanted to. But I kept telling my birth team, like, just keep waiting to come, because I feel like we're going to be a while, which was not correct. So at around 6:30 a.m. though, I went in, I got Ethan out of his crib from his nighttime sleep. I said hey to my mother-in-law, who had arrived about an hour earlier, because she was going to be our amazing childcare for the boys during labor, which all went so smoothly. And another thing I just can't recommend enough for birth, if you already have other kids, is to figure out a really good childcare plan that will help you feel relaxed for your other kids and help you know they're safe and having fun, and plan for all the scenarios, like when labor could start. Like if labor starts in the night, here's the plan. If labor starts in the afternoon and you need help, like make the different plans. But my mother-in-law had an entire document, God bless her, with the that I made for her, with like all the game plans and phone numbers and things like that she and I had talked through and went over. And it felt really good for me just to know I can count on her to come and be there and take good care of the boys when things started. And her name's Jan, and she's Adam's mom. So she was there, and it felt really good to see her. And she's like, gave me a little encouragement and a hug. And I got Ethan out of his crib. So that's like what level I was at, guys. Okay. At like 7:30 to 8 a.m. I was in good enough spirits between contractions to do all of that. I got to see both my boys, who were both so excited to see their Mimi that they didn't really care to talk to me, which is fine because I was not really in a good place for that anyway. Because again, when the contractions started, things felt pretty intense. But anyway, my mother-in-law took them downstairs and started their breakfast and had all these like fun things planned for them to do. So they were just in heaven over there playing with her. And I was upstairs with Adam, just continuing to work through contractions. And once it got to be 8:30 a.m., things picked up a ton. I feel like it was really like, I see that early time is like I was pretty chill, and then it gets to be 8:30 and I'm like, boom, like I'm feeling like this baby's about to be here. I need my birth team. And so I was telling Adam, like, I need my doula, I need my midwife, like, let's get them here. And prior to then, I kept feeling like I didn't want to rush them coming, which is something I hear people often say with home births. Like you tend to want to delay your team coming because you don't want people like feeling like they're sitting around their house kind of waiting on you. So that's how I was feeling. But as I looked back at text messages between everyone, even at like 7 a.m., I told my midwife I don't want her to come yet. So I was just weirdly delaying things. But then it was like when I felt like I was ready, I was really, really ready. And I think I just really couldn't believe it could actually be that soon, which I think is so sweet now looking back on how wrong I was. But I felt like I had many hours ahead of me, which again, Ethan's labor was 18 hours before I had my C-section. And it took me 18 hours to get to 8 centimeters dilated. Colin's was a 44-hour labor before he was born. So you can imagine that at this point, about 7 hours in, where things really weren't that intense, that I felt like I've got a lot longer to go. So again, just to summarize that time of around 1 a.m. to 8 a.m., I would summarize as like happy and joy-filled, even with really good breaks overall between contractions, but with contractions that when they eventually got to a point where I'm like, ooh, I really need my labor coping things to get through this. So at around 8:30, I became a little bit more desperate, where I'm like, oh my gosh, these are so intense. I need my birth team to get here. And my doula, V, got there right at 9 a.m. and she was there ready to encourage and ready to help. And I had not used any water yet for coping through contractions. Like I hadn't got in our shower and obviously hadn't filled up the birth tub yet. And at this point I had been coping with the pain because yes, it was painful, even though it was like really chill between, but I'd been coping with the pain with my birth comb, which is like a wooden hairbrush meant to be held in your hand for birth. And the points are really sharp. So it's like a kind of alternative pain, like move the pain somewhere else. And it really helps with contractions. So I had a pack of 3 of those. I cannot recommend those enough for labor. And I'll link to the ones I got from Amazon on my like home birth resource guide. So that's elizabethmccravey.com/birth. You can get the link to that and other things that were helpful for pain management. But that was one thing. And then counter pressure from Adam, getting on my hands and knees was a big thing during this labor. Actually, it was weird. Like when a contraction would start, I would like find myself just like going to the ground. And I also had a mobile heating pad that was on my low back. That's one that you heat up in the microwave. And it was actually meant to go around your neck. But I would stick it in the back of my pants. And that was really helpful for the pain of labor. So it's really interesting because this is my 3rd time having a labor. And each labor was so different for what I felt my body needed to do. So like in my labor with Ethan, which I found out later, I was laboring with a breech position baby, the birth ball was everything. Like I just wanted to sit on the ball and do like hip circles. And I used the heating pad then too, but I did not have a birth comb. With Colin, I used a TENS machine, and then I didn't use that with Ethan or Sophia's labor. So you just never know what's going to be like what feels good. So it's good to have options and try different things to see what might work for you in that labor. So on my birth shelf, I had a basket with all my coping things, and some of them I didn't use at all. Like I didn't use the TENS machines at all. I didn't use my actual like plug-in heating pad. There's a lot of other things I didn't use too, but I'm just glad I had them, right? So that's something I would say is really worth doing. So when V got there though at 9, she encouraged me of like, oh my gosh, you're doing it. Like, this is it. Yeah, I'm so excited. And she wanted me to get in the shower to get some relief. Again, I had not had any water yet. So I put on my swimsuit that I was planning for me to wear for the water birth. And I'll link to that swimsuit in the blog. Again, elizabethmccravey.com/birth will get you that. But it's a really cute black one. That's a maternity swimsuit. It was really great for a water birth. So I put that on, and Adam and I got in the shower together, him in a swimsuit as well. And then V did counter pressure on my back when the contractions hit, like with her standing outside the shower while I leaned on Adam. And we did that for about 45 minutes. And that was really great. That was like, some good relief I needed. And at that point I was like, OMG, I need Aubrey. I need her to come. I felt like Sophia was about to fall out of me. And I think Sophia was really ready to be born at this point. My body was like, okay, we're going to wait on the midwives to arrive. Okay. And which, to tell you the context, this is again, like at 9:45, Sophia was born at 11:17 a.m. So it was coming. It was really soon. We're like about an hour away. So Aubrey got there around 10 a.m. and her assistant midwife, Cameron, also got there at 10 a.m. And I felt such a big relief when they both arrived, like I did when V arrived as well. Okay, like I'm like, okay, like, oh my gosh, we're really doing it. This is really happening. And when Aubrey got there, I was sitting on the edge of our bed and had been working through contractions, basically frozen. So like Adam was sitting behind me on the bed doing counter pressure, and V was at the floor below me doing counter pressure on my knees, which is a really great combination to help with an intense contraction. I mean, someone like press your knees, actually. That was really nice. But I was feeling at this point like I cannot move during contractions or between contractions. Like they are so intense. I'm just stuck sitting here, and sitting is what felt good. Like not laying down, not walking, not on all fours, like just sitting there. But I actually have a photo of me and V and Adam from when my birth photographer, Elizabeth, came in that I'll post in the blog post, but you can kind of see us in this position with Adam behind me and V touching my knees. But when Aubrey got there, I asked her to do a cervical check. And something I love about home birth midwifery care is that no one's going to make you get a cervical check or make you do other things that are not medically necessary during pregnancy or during labor. But with a cervical check, all the checks I had were because of my own informed decision around it. Like I decided, like, Aubrey, like, do you think it's okay to do a check? Okay, you think it is? Like, I want to get one then. And I wasn't sure if I'd want to have a cervical exam during labor or not. I was like, I'm just going to decide in the moment. But at this moment, I was like, okay, this is so crazy intense right now. I'm like, am I hours and hours away potentially? Like, how far along am I with this dilation? So if you remember me mentioning earlier, I was between 4 and 5 centimeters dilated like a week before labor, really 2 weeks-ish before labor had even started. but I was not in active labor whatsoever. And again, that was so different from my previous birth. So when Aubrey checked me though, she tells me I'm 8 centimeters, which was great news. I think part of me was also like, I'm ready to be like 10 centimeters. Like, let's get this baby out. But it felt like still good news. Things are moving along really well. And I had some internal anxiety when I heard 8 centimeters because it brought me back to my C-section for a moment. So in my C-section, I got to 8 centimeters unmedicated, just like what was happening right now, only I was in the hospital for some of that time. But that's the only difference. It was 8 centimeters unmedicated. Felt very similar, honestly. Just the difference was not being in the hospital, not going through triage or any of that. And I got to 8 centimeters. And then at my 8 centimeter cervical exam from a nurse was when they told me that they thought Ethan might be breech. And then that led me to very quickly after getting an ultrasound, where then they told me at this hospital, you can't have a breech vaginal birth. You have to go have a C-section. So I had all the whiplash of like, whiplash back to that. And I was so deep into this labor. And of course I didn't mention it to anyone, but it went through my head of things like, okay, this is so similar. It's time for me this time to get past 8 centimeters and birth this baby. Like, let's go. But it also felt like a bit anxiety inducing to like hear that 8 centimeters news again. And then right after that, I had another C-section throwback moment that was my birth photographer arriving in the bedroom, which again, if you're like, wait, why is that a C-section throwback? Let me tell you in a minute. But first let me say, I cannot recommend hiring a birth photographer enough, regardless of the kind of birth you're having. This was my first time having a photographer there. And I was actually really on the fence about it originally. And now I'm just like, I cannot imagine not having these beautiful photos and also not having had her there as another like wonderful presence in the room. So my photographer's name is also Elizabeth. Elizabeth Nord Photography is her business name. And she lives about 3 minutes away from me. So it was a perfect fit. But she's also not typically a birth photographer. And prior to my birth, she had only been at one birth and it was in a hospital. So home birth was really new to her. She's a wedding photographer actually, and does like portraits as well and things like that. But here's the C-section throwback moment, okay? And if you guys heard my birth story with Ethan, then you're going to be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember you talking about this, but the C-section throwback moment that really just felt so similar. And I think God planted this little seed of similarity to show me like how he's not giving me a C-section again this time and showing me his answered prayers. So let me explain. In my C-section, after I got to 8 centimeters and was unmedicated still and was headed towards a C-section, but I didn't know it yet necessarily, I decided to get an epidural because they told me they were going to have to do an aggressive vaginal exam to figure out if my baby was breech. So they were like recommending an epidural. Anyway, everything in my labor had been so smooth and relaxed and quiet and the room was peaceful. And then it's epidural time. And the anesthesiologist comes into my hospital room to do the epidural. And I'm, again, unmedicated and pretty intense labor at this point, 8 centimeters. And he comes in, immediately says, it smells awful in here, referring to the essential oils in the room. And he's fanning himself with his paperwork to get rid of the smell. He's fanning the door open and close. He turns on the overhead lights in the room because he said it was too dark. And it was just a very like rude and dramatic entrance. It was very unsettling to me at the time as a woman very far into labor and a lot of pain. And it was a very memorable part of Ethan's birth experience of like this transition moment when the anesthesiologist came in and told me the room smelled bad. It was kind of rude. So anyway, this time, guys, though, at a home birth, I'm at home now for my home birth, same point in labor of right after finding out I'm 8 centimeters dilated. Same thing happening of a new person who had not been there yet entering the birth space. And now it's not an anesthesiologist, it's a photographer. But again, kind of same point in labor, right? And she does not know anything about this story with the anesthesiologist from before, but she walks into our bedroom and just her instinct was to say, wow, it smells amazing in here. Everything is so beautiful. Hello, everyone. Like that was her interest. She says, oh, it smells amazing in here. Everything is so beautiful. And guys, even at my 8 centimeters, I was basically in transition at this point. At that point, still, I was able to see that similarity and just thank God for her in that difference and felt like that was a little wink from God of like, hey, you might be 8 centimeters again with your cervical check, but like this birth story is about to end different. It was just such a good, like beautiful contrast for me. And it's like God sent Liz in to say like, hey, everything's going to be okay. God is with you. And she didn't know that. She was saying that to me and that God was using her in that way. But she was. So, yeah, just such a sweet, sweet moment for me amidst all the intensity happening. So At this point, though, the whole team is there, right? Birth photographer's here. Both midwives are here. My doula's here. My mother-in-law's downstairs taking care of the kids. Adam is obviously there. And I am fully in transition. So literally like right after Liz got there, I threw up. I started doing all the transition things. I'm still just like sitting frozen on the edge of our bed, and everything was really intense, and it felt like it was almost time. So they started working really quickly. It was kind of a little bit panicky to fill up the birth tub because the feeling was that Sofia could be coming at any moment, really. So we need to get the tub ready. And the tub was already set up because we actually left it set up in our bedroom since I was 36 weeks pregnant. So you have to, during pregnancy, you set it up to test it for your home visit with your midwife. Typically, that's what we did. And you can take it down and then blow it back up again when birth starts. But I decided to leave the birth pool up, and I actually liked having it there at just random times to just help me visualize birth and like mentally prepare, like just seeing it was nice for me in that way. And we had room in our bedroom to leave it there. We had moved a chair out that was normally in that spot, and that's how we made space for it. So I had that birth pool. I also had gorgeous twinkle lights in the tub, between the tub and the liner. And then I had hung on the wall against, like kind of behind the tub. You'll see this in the birth photos, but I had a mix of photos that just made me smile. Like I literally looked through all of our printed family photos and like picked the ones that just gave me a moment of like, oh, I just love that. Like brings a smile to my face. And I also had birth affirmations that I had designed on Canva and printed off that were like specific things that were affirmations that were encouraging to me. And so I felt like with a home birth, having the birth tub get filled out is such a similar experience to when you're at the hospital and they bring out that like warm lamp and receiving stuff for the baby. Like they're rolling that thing in. It tells you at the hospital that like, hey, we think your baby's about to be born. And here with the birth pool being filled by your birth team, it's like your birth team is saying, hey, we think you're going to be done very soon. So I remember still in my labor with Colin, the joy I felt after so many hours. I think I would have had like 43 hours at that point when they brought in the little baby warmer thing. And I was like, finally, someone thinks this baby's about to be born. And so I felt that same energy this time too, because by now, again, things were pretty intense and I was excited to like get in the birth tub. So I got in my birth tub at around 10:30ish. I'm surrounded by this beautiful room of women and my amazing husband in broad daylight, because again, this is 10:30 a.m. But I was basically keeping my eyes shut permanently at this point. So even though you can see this in our birth photos, but the room was like had completely just like normally well lit because it is early morning, midday, I guess. But to me, it was still dark. Like I just kept my eyes closed and didn't know it. But I'm at this point about 45 minutes away from meeting my daughter. And this part again runs together completely for me. It's one of those things like, and when you're in labor, it's like, you don't know. Time stands still. You don't know how long things are. But things were intense. And I never asked for an epidural. I never wanted to transfer to the hospital. I didn't want any of those things. So I never asked for any of those things. But, as someone who going through transition at the intense part, like starting to push all of that, the things that were like my go-to sayings, which sounds funny to share now, but I would say, I do not like this. I do not like this. And then I would say, I am so ready to be done. I am ready for this to be over. I am done. I am so done. That was like my birth team said my statements are. And again, I don't even remember saying all that, but that was what apparently I would say is, I'm so done with this. I'm just kind of in a like matter of fact, like I'm done. So that was my like go-to statement. But I knew the only way out was through. And so I was feeling like I'm ready to be done with this. Let's be done. So when I'm in the tub, and again, the contractions were at their most intense now. I'm about to start pushing. I screamed some, and my doula V, she kept reminding me to have low moans and low sounds. And that reminder helped a ton. So I let out a few screams at different points, but generally thanks to her reminding me that, Aubrey, Cameron, everyone being like be low voices, I was able to work on that. At some point, Adam got in the tub with me. So instead of trying to do hip squeezes and emotional support from like outside of the tub, he just got in. I think someone told him like, hey, Adam, do you want to just get in with her? And he did, which was so sweet. I know that's not always common in birth for your husband to be in the birth pool or the tub with you. But guys, I loved it. So maybe if you're planning a home birth, consider telling your husband that if it feels like it makes sense, like, hey, get in the pool too. And Adam, y'all, I mean, you've heard this in my other birth stories if you've listened to those, but he truly has been like the best partner in all three of my births and just so like in it with me. Like that's how it felt. Like he is literally in the birth pool with me, and he's been so invested in every step of the way and like doing all he can to help and like In a lot of ways, I mean, I wish he was here to like tell his part of the story. We could definitely, with 3 kids right now, not pull off us both recording and stepping away to do this together. So he is not here to talk about it with me, but I know like he kind of said that like towards the end, he really just like felt for me and like felt my pain. It was like wishing he could take it away and like trying to do all he could, but he really was just like, he is just such an involved husband and was in it with me. So I'm in the tub, I'm holding V's hands, and there's actually a lot of beautiful photos of like my hands kind of over the birth pool, holding her hands. And Adam was behind me doing hip squeezes, rubbing my back, being encouraging. My midwife was right there close by the tub too. And then Cameron was taking notes and like assisting and getting things as needed. And then Liz is kind of back at the room taking photos. And I just kept my eyes seriously closed this whole time. And V read me the affirmations and scripture from my wall with the twinkly lights, which was so helpful because I was in no position to read anything. I'm actually facing away from this to be facing my birth team. So it's all behind me anyway. I was keeping my eyes sealed shut. So I was not in a position to read anything. But she was reading them to me and I kept saying like, yes, please, like keep reading them, keep reading them. And so she just kept going through them, reading them over and over again. And these are words and scriptures that I had hand selected, and I made these graphics in Canva myself. And they were truly what I need to hear in this tough time of like transition and pushing and things just being so intense. And so I would just encourage you, like with birth affirmations and scriptures you pick to encourage you in your birth, have someone else be ready to read them over you, but also pick ones that are unique and custom to you, because what resonates with you might be different than what resonates with me, or what resonates with like the generic cards you might be able to find somewhere to purchase. So I had some of those up too, actually, some that my friends gave me at my sprinkle for Sophia's birth, which were really sweet, those affirmation cards. So I had a mix of those and I picked out the ones of those that resonated with me the most, and then also the ones that I made. So I want to tell you though, some of the affirmations I had that were like my absolute favorites. So one was, my body cannot produce a sensation beyond what I can bear. That's been a really big one for me in all 3 of my labors. The more my body relaxes, the more comfortable I feel. That is so true, guys. If you quit clenching up, everything relaxes. Your body can't do something beyond what you can bear. If you just relax into it, things move faster. My body knows how to give birth, and I've done this before. That was like a huge, huge one for me in trying for a VBAC, just like reminding myself of all these different elements from Colin and Ethan's births. Like both of them combined are like things I learned in each going to help me have this home birth that I'm wanting. So that was a big one for me. Lord, take away my fears and replace them with your peace. That was another one I liked. And then I had Psalm 23 up, Philippians 4:6-7, and Jeremiah 33:3. Those were some of the scriptures, and specifically that really resonated with me. So I can't recommend enough listening to birth affirmations or looking up some and seeing what resonates with you in pregnancy, and then printing them out, having someone who can read them over you, have them on your wall to glance at when you're not at an intense point in the process. But like those words in scripture were so comforting to me. And when V was reading them, it was like everything I need to hear. And I was like, please don't stop. Like, keep talking, keep reading them. Like, that's how I felt. Like, I just needed those words as like a distraction and encouragement. So before too long, my body started voluntarily pushing, basically. We never checked to make sure I'm complete in 10 centimeters. That's often not done in home births anyway. I just had that one cervical check before when I was 8 centimeters. And now this would have been around, I guess, 11 a.m. So like about 30 minutes after getting into the tub, we're just listening to my body. So I pushed, I did some slight position changes, like changing which leg was lifted at one point per my midwife telling me to switch legs. And I did a mix of like coached pushing where Aubrey was telling me to bear down and push, and some pushes that were just happening, like not even with contractions. Like it was just all just going to happen at once. Like the fetal ejection reflex thing. If you've heard of that, I felt some of that. But I only pushed for 15 minutes, which is really cool that it was that fast. So 15 minutes went by and she was born. So pushing was really, really fast. And Aubrey kind of grabbed her from between my legs as she came out and handed her straight to me. I brought her to my chest and I sat back into the tub and just, leaned back, holding Sofia, Adam right there sitting beside me with his arms around me. I broke my claw clip that was in my hair during pushing, which I don't even know how that happened, but things were intense enough that apparently my like hair clip even broke, but that, that shows the intensity. And that's why in the photos right after birth, it looks as though I had birthed the baby with my hair down. I did not. My claw clip just literally broke and fell into the water. So I seriously though cannot, I can bring myself back to right now. I cannot explain though the feeling of just excitement and relief and satisfaction I felt meeting Sophia and like seeing her, like, oh my gosh, here's this baby with a head of hair and this sweet little girl. She feels really big, and holding her for the first time. She was born at 11:17 a.m., which is another thing that felt really beautiful to me because I love 11s and 1s with numbers. So the 11, 17, those are like just 11 and 7, like my favorite numbers right there with her being born then. But there's nothing like meeting your baby for the first time. And I had the additional satisfaction, this moment of being like, oh my gosh, that was all the things I've wanted. I can't believe I just did that. I can't believe that just happened. And I held her, and, Aubrey started to examine her a little. She let out her first cries. We had a towel over her and me. Adam did the nasal suction thing for her that you do when a baby is born. But I just basically held her in a tub with the towel over both of us. And I cried the happiest tears ever while holding her. And I have photos where I look like really sad, but it's actually just like happy tears. My placenta was born on its own really quickly after Sophia was born. So that was also in the tub in like a bowl floating with us. And that was a blessing too, because sometimes you need extra help getting the placenta out after, but it came out just 5 minutes later. And we left it attached and like cut the cord later, which I'll get to. But everyone was like saying to me, Elizabeth, you just did that. Can you believe you just did that? Oh my gosh. Like I knew this was going to like happen for you. Like I'm so excited. And I seriously, like, y'all, I'm not kidding. I felt like I was dreaming. And so I'm telling people, like, honestly, no, I can't believe I literally feel like I'm dreaming. I'm going to cry. I literally, guys, right after she was born, sitting there in that tub with my wonderful husband's arm around me and this amazing group of women surrounding me, I felt like I was dreaming. And I think I felt that way because I got my dream birth. And I get emotional talking about it, but I really did. I got my dream birth where there's not a single thing I would change. Truly not. God truly answered every hope, every prayer, every desire for this birth, including desires that I didn't even voice and didn't care that much about enough to even pray for. Like God just truly answered every inch, every little centimeter, millimeter of things surrounding this birth. And I was so grateful. And none of it felt like real life. Like it truly didn't. Even like the next day after, I was like, I can't believe that just happened. I kept feeling that like, what was that real? Are we sure this isn't just like one of the dreams I've had about what birth will be like? Because that's how it felt. And it was cool because if I were to have like made up a dream, made up my fictional story about what this birth could be like, it would have been exactly what occurred. Like I wouldn't have changed a single thing. Even the intensity of it, like as intense as it was, I wanted that and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the intensity of birth and intensity of contractions and feeling my body do all that. I still just cannot believe that this is my story, that I had my dream birth, but I did. So I'll get more to thoughts on that in a moment, diving into like God's provision and things I see and all that, comparing the births, but I want to keep going with the story here. So I sat in the water with my placenta and with Sophia on my chest and Adam, 2 in the tub for a little while until I was told I needed to get out. And I was so just in my own birth bubble that I was never going to think to get out of the pool on my own. So my birth team, they wrapped me in a towel and they helped me walk to our bed while carrying Sophia. And it felt weird to walk so soon after birth because I had not done that previously after birth, like walking like literally like 30 minutes after or less, I guess. But it wasn't many steps. My bed was right there. And so we laid in the bed. Sophia started nursing. I was just hydrating and drinking a lot of water where everyone just hung out basically. And it was just so joyful is what I would say. Nothing felt rushed or frantic. It was just very, very relaxed, which felt really cool. And I cut I cut the cord myself at 12:35. So a little over an hour after she was born. It was also really cool to do that myself. I hadn't done that before. Adam cut the cord when Colin was born. And then with Ethan, since it was a C-section, neither of us did that. So that was cool getting to do that. And everyone was just taking care of me, taking care of cleaning up the room, starting towels in the laundry, all of that kind of stuff. And my boys were still downstairs with my mother-in-law. And I'm sure it was such a weird experience for Adam, but he actually like got up and went down there to help her get the boys down for naps. Like just going from like, okay, my wife just had a baby to like, okay, now I'm going to do a nap time routine. And we decided to wait until after the boys' naps to have them meet Sophia, and my mother-in-law too, to have her meet her, so that things wouldn't be rushed. And I'll talk about this more next week because I'm going to do a birth Q&A episode. But my boys were in the house when Sophia was born. They were just downstairs and not aware that a birth was happening. My mother-in-law also, it's cool, V was who told her. She went downstairs at one point and was like, I just wanted to tell you, you now have a granddaughter. And that's kind of how she told her. And my mother-in-law was just shook because she was thinking like she had like a day ahead of her, taking care of the boys with no baby while I'm in labor upstairs. And, she was planning on getting them out of the house and like doing all this kind of stuff. So for her to be told like, wait, what? It's already over. She was really shocked and also obviously really, really thrilled and excited things went to plan. So she got the news that way. But the boys, they were just downstairs with Jan during everything. And she did tell me that at one point when I was quite loud, probably I guess towards the end, she had the boys transition from playing with Play-Doh to watching TV and turned the volume up pretty loud. So they were unaware though that they had a baby sister born upstairs, and they both went down for naps and rest time, also unaware that they just had a baby sister. And I liked the waiting because I wanted them to be able to meet her when I was like more put together. And when we had like done all the things that need to be done of like checking Sofia out and all that first. So they went down for naps. Jan went back downstairs and we all just kept staying in the room. My birth photographer left for a little while. Again, she's like a neighbor of mine. So she was able to leave. And then she came back 2 hours later to photograph the boys getting to meet Sofia, and my mother-in-law meeting her, and then my sister coming in. So that was really sweet and special to have all those photos. Eventually, at some point in there, after, nursing, laying down for a while, all of that, Aubrey weighed and measured Sofia and did all the stuff to do her APGAR score and all of that, which I don't even remember much of the details of that, but all that happened. So Adam was the second person to hold Sofia after me, and then Aubrey held her to do her weight and height and all that. And this is just a cool thing for me. So Ethan, who was my wonderful, beautiful, amazing C-section boy, he was 8 pounds, 5 ounces at birth. And I still remember after having my C-section, some of the nurses, and I don't blame them for this is fine, but it's just full circle moment, okay? They kind of joked to me that, aren't you glad you didn't have to push him out because he's a big baby, which by the way, 8 pounds, 5 ounces is not a big baby, okay? But that's kind of what they said to me. They're like, aren't you glad you didn't push him out? And he was bigger than Colin. Colin was under 8 pounds. He was 7 pounds, like 10 ounces, I think, or something like that. So Colin was a lot smaller. So this was like, we were all like, wow, like Ethan's a bigger baby at birth than Colin was. But I remember them saying that to me, and I was feeling a little bit like, well, no, I didn't want to have a C-section, but also like heard what they were saying, right? That like, he was a bigger baby, I guess. So anyway, with this birth, when we're all like Aubrey's about to weigh Sofia and we're about to find out what she weighs, we all guessed, which was really fun. Again, such like an intimate, cool thing about a home birth, but we're guessing what she's going to weigh. And at this point, I had learned that I did not tear during pushing. I also learned that pushing was only 15 minutes. Both of those things I did not know during it, because pushing, how long does it feel? Who knows? It felt like a long time, honestly, in some ways, but it was only 15 minutes and I didn't tear. So with those two things in mind, we're all guessing like how much Sofia weighs. And I'm like, well, gosh, she's going to weigh a lot less than Ethan. I think I guessed like close to 7 pounds, like even or something. I'm like, she's probably a small baby. And that's why pushing was fast. That's why I didn't tear. And y'all, would you believe it? She's the same weight as Ethan. She weighed 1 ounce less than Ethan. And wasn't too big to push out, not tearing. So I don't know, that just felt like a sweet, like full circle moment of like, hey, my body can do this. And my body did so many incredible things having that C-section. If you listen to me share my C-section birth story, you know that I've never felt braver or stronger. And I still say that after having a home birth, than I did having my C-section. But it was also just a cool thing to be like, oh yeah, like this is like the same weight baby. And I was able to have a vaginal birth there. So that was really cool. And again, just sweet, like everything after, a great way to describe it is just like sweet and relaxed, joy filled. My sister ended up bringing my favorite Italian food, Amico's Pizza in Nolansville around here. So like everyone was like, Liz, what do you want for your after birth food? And I'm like, Italian food, like let's get some pasta, let's get some salad, let's go big. And so there's also some photos from when my photographer came, because when she first came in, we were actually, I guess it was towards the end, but I was eating a plate of pasta in bed with Ethan sitting in my lap, also eating pasta, and Sofia like laying next to us. And it was just the sweetest. Again, like this beautiful, beautiful, sweet afterbirth time, which I'll share more about some of that when I do next week's episode with the Q&A. But that's a little bit of kind of what things were like after birth. I'll also do another episode after that one where I talk more about postpartum and can dive in to all that more. But yeah, I just look at this birth as God answering every prayer, a beautiful experience. I'm so proud of, such an interesting bonding with Sofia too. I'm like, we did that. Like I look at her and I'm like, can you believe we did that, girl? Like we did that together. And it was also so special, again, just like laying in bed with her and getting to look at her and be like, this is my baby, and meeting her that way at home. And then going to sleep that night in the same room she was born in. It was just really, really cool. So as writing this, I thought to myself, like, what do I want to say about birth in general and encouragement for you as we close? Then again, I want to share that prayer list I mentioned and walk through that and talk about God's timing to answer prayers. But one thing I want to say about birth, as someone who's had 3 babies now, is that you have decisions around birth. And what I want to say about that too is that whatever you want is valid. And something I love so much about birth is how everyone's birth hopes and goals are going to be unique to you, and even unique to that particular pregnancy and that particular birth. And that's good. And my encouragement is just to advocate for yourself and find providers who don't tolerate your hopes, who don't just, like in the case of a VBAC, don't just let you try for a VBAC or whatever else it is, but who support you and believe in you and hear you for whatever the birth goal is that you're trying for. I also want to encourage you that all birth is beautiful and all birth is sacred and all birth is powerful. And I believe a beautiful thing about birth is that there's not a right way to do it. There's just a way that you want to do it for that particular birth of yours. And that's the right way. So I'm not someone who would say like everyone should have a home birth or everyone who has a C-section should try for a VBAC, because I just don't think that's true. I certainly don't think, especially in the case of a VBAC, that like the VBAC's necessarily right for everyone. Like you have to evaluate what is right for you. And I think you have to pick what's best for you and be prayerful about the options you have, and what you works for one birth might not be what you pick for another. And it's cool to me to look back that for all 3 of my babies, I actually picked a different thing in pregnancy for even where I wanted to give birth. You know, with Colin, I said I wanted to give birth in a birth center. Ultimately, it was a hospital though. And then with Ethan, I said I want to give birth in a hospital. Ultimately had a hospital birth. And then this time I said I wanted to have a home birth. And each of those decisions were the right decision at the time. And you have a decision to make, and let it be fun. And what I hope in general too is that more providers will focus on helping women get to the birth hopes they have, whatever that hope is. And I can actually see that a lot in all 3 of my births, that I did have providers trying to help me get as much of the goals and the hopes in the birth plan as they could. And again, everyone's hopes are different. Like maybe you really want to make sure the epidural works and that you get it in time. Maybe you really want to have a positive scheduled C-section experience, or maybe you want a low intervention hospital birth, or maybe you want a home birth like I did this time. Whatever you want, it's valid, it's beautiful, and God shows up in it. And He has been present with me in all of my births, from the hospital room to the operating room and to my own bedroom. And God will show up for you too, wherever and however your birth experience unfolds. So let's talk about answered prayers. So on the episode about Colin's birth story, as a new mom, again, I listened to that episode recently, so I heard this, but I say in that episode, sometimes God doesn't answer our prayers because He has something better for us. And I said that again back then as a new mom who had these birth plans, I had these hopes for this unmedicated birth center birth, and had to have a lot of interventions at a hospital. And I felt that even then, that I knew that God has different things prepared, and we don't always see the full picture. And God gave me the birth I desired and prayed for through a surprise pregnancy and a surprise baby girl after 2 boys. And He wanted me to have those other 2 births too. And in my first 2 births, I felt like there were a lot of hopes for the birth experience that didn't happen, right? And seemingly a lot of unanswered prayers with answered prayers too, right there beside it. Like, for example, I wanted and prayed for an unmedicated birth at a birth center with Colin. I got induced at a hospital with a lot of interventions instead. With Ethan, I didn't want to have a C-section, but I did, even though things were going great and it felt really out of the blue. But ultimately in both births, God did answer my prayers, so many of the little details. Obviously, the biggest prayer of a healthy baby. And I think all of us can agree that we would absolutely throw out all the birth dreams and all the hopes out the window for the sake of a healthy baby in the end. Give me a million C-sections if that's what means, right? But if you also do have hopes for the experience, that's valid. You're allowed to want things for your birth, and you can hold 2 things, right? That you want a healthy baby to be born, and that's number 1. And you also have hopes and goals for what the experience is like. And I felt it at the time, I feel it still, but now with clarity, God was building my trust in Him through these different experiences. And there's a Tim Keller quote I heard recently that's so relevant to this. And he says, "We would never learn to trust God if He always gave us what we asked for right away." Read that again. We would never learn to trust God if he always gave us what we asked for right away. And I feel that is so true. And it would be easy for me had all my births been like, oh, so perfect, everything I wanted, to declare that my great births were because of me or my circumstances or how well I prepared. But because I've experienced this wide range of labors and births, I know that it's God. And I feel like God basically heard my prayers every birth. He answered some. And it's like he was telling me, I'm going to give you the birth of your dreams, but not the first time. Not the second time, but in the most unlikely way, when you're doing the unheard of a home birth 16 months after a C-section, when you need to rely on me even more, and with a baby girl after 2 boys when you didn't even know if you'd have 3 kids. Like, I feel like that's what God was telling me. That's what he did. He gave me my dream home birth when everything on paper says I should have had to be at a hospital, when I maybe should have just had a repeat C-section. And when at the point a few months before this even happened, I didn't even know if I'd try for a home birth. I was halfway through my pregnancy, considering a scheduled repeat C-section, maybe a VBAC at a hospital, but home birth had kind of become off my radar. And I'm just beyond grateful. And I'm grateful to be here telling you the story and showing God's goodness, which has been so evident in this birth and my other 2. And I want to encourage you that when you have prayers go unanswered, just know that God's never done. He's not done yet. And his plans are better than our plans. He works in ways we can't even see. And I still don't feel like I have the full picture of all he's doing and done, even in these birth stories, but he just works in such mysterious ways, and just know he's not done with you. And as I've said before, God always provides, and he never wastes anything. That's one of my favorite things to say about God. He always provides. He never wastes anything. And sometimes he doesn't answer our prayers because there's a better and bigger plan in store that we can't see, but that he is already writing. So I want to read to you that list that I sent to friends and family, and also share some full circle moments that were meaningful to me in this birth. So in Colin and Ethan's birth stories, I both ended both those episodes by sharing ways God answered prayers. In Colin's episode, I actually formatted the whole story by sharing 10 ways God showed up when birth didn't go to plan. That was how I told his birth story. So I want to share those answered prayers this time too, and also some like full circle moments as a third time mom that felt amazing to me. So first full circle moment, having a home birth after being told by some providers that I couldn't even do a VBAC in a hospital, much less at home. So that just felt very much like, wow, like that happened after being told that like maybe a VBAC wasn't even possible for me at all. Not having GBS, which stands for Group B strep, for the first time in any of my pregnancies with Colin and Ethan. I both had that. I got antibiotics during labor both time, and this time I was GBS negative, which was just amazing. Another just amazing, like blessing answer to prayers was being low risk my whole pregnancy. I really just had a very low risk pregnancy, and I felt like God kept reminding me that this home birth is for me by showing me how low risk I was, and that my biggest risk factor was the previous C-section. Another thing that was really cool is being the fastest, this is so random, being the fastest birth in July for my doula. And again, that feels really random. Let me explain, but she told me after the fact that that was the fastest labor of any of her July moms that she was a doula for. And the reason that feels significant, because I'm not trying to like win a race or anything, but it just felt significant because of having previously really long labors. And in my labor with Colin, my labor was so long that the doula team I was with, they rotated through 3 different doulas to have support for me because it was just so long. So it was that long that doulas were tapping out, having to go home, back to their family, back to getting some sleep. And ultimately the doula, who was amazing and there when Colin was born, I'd never met before because my labor was just so long. So that was cool to go from that for my first birth to her being like, yeah, you were the quickest birth. Like, it took it, your labor started later than maybe you wanted, but you're the quickest. Aubrey, my midwife, telling me that she thought when labor started, it would be quick, and me just being like, wow, that would be amazing, but I can't believe that. And then having her be right was really cool. Dilating so much prior to labor starting, that just being such a unique thing compared to my first 2 birth experiences was really cool. Having a baby in a good position, like I'm just like, yes, thank the Lord. At the end of pregnancy, I actually had 2 additional ultrasounds just to like double, triple check that Sofia was head down, because after having a surprise breech baby, I'm like, you never know. And I'm like, I know I trusted Aubrey that she's like feeling that Sofia appears to be head down, but I just really needed to like know and see it myself. And she was head down with those ultrasounds, but that just felt really cool because I've had a breech baby, and then Colin was asynclitic, so still head down, but OP and just not helping me dilate during labor. So to have a labor where baby's head down, she was born at LOA position, just came out easily, really awesome. And then last full circle thing, God answering every prayer on my prayer list. I shared some other things already, like how Liz coming in at the time when I was 8 centimeters, feeling like making me remember my C-section in a like full circle way. Okay, so now I'm going to read that prayer list though. I literally just copy and pasted this from the document and ClickUp to read to you guys. I'm going to comment on a few things. Again, it feels vulnerable a little bit for me to share this. And originally felt very vulnerable to send out to friends and family, but I want to read you the prayer list again, kind of comment on some things, but this is what I wrote prior to birth and had finalized it when I was about a month out from giving birth. So here we go. Let me pull that up. Okay. So it says, our biggest prayer is for a healthy baby Ursa and a healthy mama in the birth process, regardless of any twists and turns. So yeah, that was my biggest prayer. Healthy mom, healthy baby. Second, pray that Elizabeth can let go of big fears around birth this time. Trying for a VBAC at home feels scary in a lot of ways. Pray that fear won't get in the way of the birthing process for us and that we'll have open hands in the process. So this was so beyond answered because I truly feel like I birthed fear-free. And all the things I was worried about before labor starting, because I did have, so I'll talk about this next week, but I had so many of the fears come up that are common when you're trying for a VBAC. Of fears like uterine rupture, for example, was something I started fearing and just having all this like, oh my gosh, like what if that happens? I'm so scared. And I was praying, in addition to this prayer I wrote here personally, that I wouldn't have fear unless something was actually wrong. And if something was wrong, I wanted the instincts to jump into action, go to a hospital and take care of things. But I was praying that I wouldn't have any fears unless there was a reason to fear, basically. And yeah, it's such an answer to prayers, but I literally did not think once about the word uterine rupture. Like that never passed my thoughts when labor was starting. I didn't think about like, just any of the issues. So many, when I wrote out in my prayer journal, I prayed over, I'm not going to name all the things, but like specific kinds of complications that could happen in birth. I was praying against those. And yeah, and everything went super smooth. And I let go of all the fears around birth that again came up for me really intensely at the end of pregnancy of just like getting really fearful. They all went away. So such answer to prayers. Okay, third thing, pray for labor to start naturally and in God's perfect timing so that no hospital induction is needed. And then I wrote too, God answered this prayer with Ethan, and God answered again. So I went into labor at 40 and 5 days, born at 40 and 6 days, which was God's perfect timing, and labor got to start naturally again. All right, next thing, pray that Sofia will get into the perfect position for a healthy, straightforward, quick-ish vaginal birth. Pray against breech, OP, or asynclitic position. And then I added, for people to know, Ethan was breech, Colin was asynclitic and OP, leading to a long labor with lots of painful back labor. Position matters so much for how labor goes and how quick things are. And like I said, Sofia was clearly in the perfect position, which is so different from the past births. And I'll talk next week on episode 320 about some things I did to prepare. And in my blog, elizabethmccravey.com/birth, I link up some videos I did that I feel like helped me work with positioning and some other resources there. But yeah, God answered that prayer of like healthy, straightforward, quickish birth, right? Next thing, pray that we'll have a successful home birth and will not need to transfer to a hospital for any reason in labor, birth, pushing, or postpartum. Again, really specific there. And I prayed over each of those things of like, let's talk labor, let's talk birth, pushing, postpartum, didn't need to transfer for anything. Pray that if a medical emergency did arise, our birth team would be able to act swiftly and calmly to get us to a hospital ASAP. And this was something I was praying over big time. And I was able to feel confident and have a home birth because I do live like 8 minutes from a hospital, and because I knew my midwife, Aubrey, is not like a risk taker with birth. And so that gave me a lot of confidence in her. And she and I, leading up to birth and appointments, we talked through what it would look like to transfer, different things we transfer for, how we would navigate that. And so I felt really like informed and ready, but I was like, yes, if something comes up, I want to go to the hospital immediately. And so that was a prayer, like if an emergency arises, like that we would act swiftly. Next one, pray for a VBAC and that there will be no medical need for a C-section again. Pray that Adam, Elizabeth, and our birth team will make smart, informed decisions when needed, and that we'll be able to feel confident in our decisions. And we didn't even really end up needing to make decisions. Like, it's the truth. Like, everything just happened naturally, and just, there were no real decisions to be made. So that's really cool. Next one is pray for our birth team specifically by name if you'd like. And I wrote everyone's name. And again, I was praying in my prayer journal over them specifically that they would be well rested, that they would make good decisions, have the stamina for whatever happens in birth, that they'd be encouraging and to have their childcare taken care of, like all those sorts of things we were praying for. Pray for a faster labor than with Colin and Ethan, and if not quicker, the stamina to keep my energy up throughout however long it takes with an unmedicated birth. And I remember feeling almost guilty for praying for labor to be faster because I'm like, I don't really care if it's that fast. Like, I just want to pray for like the stamina to do it. And that's why I said like faster, but also like, if not faster, just like the stamina to keep up with it. And again, God just like, so appreciate this, but like labor was short. Okay. Labor was about 9 hours start to finish, and arguably much shorter than that for active labor. It was arguably actually less than 5 hours of active labor, which is just really cool for labor to have been that short. And I just feel like God showed up and said like, I'm going to give you a shorter labor this time, and a really short pushing phase, right? Only 15 minutes of pushing. Like, that's such answer to prayers. Again, one that I didn't even write out and pray. Next one, pray that I'll be well rested when labor starts and be able to rest in early labor. And God did this to the max. So I went to bed around 9 p.m. that night. So I had about 4 hours of sleep, which is enough, not like a ton, but enough. And then I was able to keep resting during early labor and not sleeping through contractions, but like laying down during them. So I felt well rested when labor started. It wasn't like I lived a whole day, got no sleep, and it starts at 9 p.m. or something. Pray that Colin and Ethan will handle birth well for whatever parts of it they are ultimately around for. Then I wrote, I want them to be there for some of it, and we are praying that it can be really sweet and non-stressful to have them there. Open hands about this, LOL. And I did have very open hands about that. I'll talk about this next week, because one of the questions I'm going to answer is like how you decided. Like, did you decide to have your boys at birth? How you made that decision? How did you prepare them for a home birth? So I'll talk all about that. But I did have such open hands about this. And what ultimately happened is like, I did not even think to ask them to come in there. I'm just like, once things got really going, it did not cross my mind. I knew they were well taken care of with my mother-in-law, and I don't know that it would have been good for them to have seen me in such intense labor, like especially Ethan. I just don't think it would have gone well, even though Colin was pretty prepared for like what to expect in a home birth. So anyway, I'll talk about that more next week, but that was the answer to prayers, right? That they were just well taken care of. Next thing, pray that the majority of labor will happen at night or while the boys are at preschool, so we don't have to worry about their care during labor. And again, that was answered by like a lot of it being during the night, and then my sweet mother-in-law just giving them the best time and them not even know anything was happening. Okay, then this is the last one I wrote. Pray for Jan, who against my mother-in-law, as she takes care of Colin and Ethan while me and Adam are doing the labor and birth thing. It is a lot caring for two small kids. Pray for her to have the energy, for the boys to be quote unquote easy, and for her to find good and simple ways to get out of the house if needed, and for us to be able to get extra help from other friends and family in the birth team too, if needed. And I said, thank you again for praying for us and our baby girl. It means the world. So yeah, and that one was again answered too, that like, it was just not that long and so smooth for her, taking care of Colin and Ethan, and she got there in perfect timing, all of that. So that is it. That's my 13 prayer list for my girl who was born on July 13th, and God did it. He just showed up, and you can hear that, through what I'm reading. Again, I wrote more detailed prayers out in my journal, which I also have up with right here with me. I had a specific prayer where I prayed against uterine rupture. I had another prayer before one of my final ultrasounds about praying for her to be head down. I wrote a prayer of praise about her being head down after an ultrasound. And then I had a big prayer over my fears, just praying for the fears, praying for spontaneous labor. Yeah, for Jan with the kids, I wrote a whole prayer about that. I wrote another prayer for each birth team member by name, all of that. So yeah, to close out this episode, I'm just so thrilled. I'm still so excited about how this birth went. I'm thrilled to be a mom of 3. It's been going more smoothly than I would have expected. This transition from 2 to 3 has just been really, really sweet. Again, I'll talk about that on the postpartum episode coming up, but it's just been so, so sweet. And even almost 3 months after, I'm still just feeling that birth high of just like, it was such a wonderful day. And I feel so grateful to God for both a healthy baby and also giving me the desires of my heart with how this birth went. So if you want the resources I mentioned, links to my birth team, if you're like, I'm in the national area, you want to work with anyone, if you want to see room setup stuff for like the specific links I bought for like the lighting and things like that, elizabethmccravey.com/birth will get you there. And that's just a page with like supplements and birth team, the pain management tools. There's a lot of things. You guys know I love providing resources like that. So it was a really fun blog post for me to write. And then the episode before this one is about deciding to try for a VBAC in my pregnancy experience. So worth listening to that one as well. The show notes for this episode are elizabethmccravey.com/319. And I put some photos as well in that blog post so you guys can see some of the pretty photos taken by Elizabeth Nord Photography from my birth. And then in the 2 episodes after that, episode 320 and 321, I'm going to talk birth Q&A and postpartum Q&A, and I'm going to share about some things I'm sure I forgot to cover in this episode and answering some questions you guys send in too after hearing this episode and some that you sent in on Instagram, just like right after she was born and some stuff I want to talk about more. Again, I know I share the whole birth story. I'm talking an hour and a half, but there are still some things I'm sure I left out. So anyway, be sure to listen to those after. And thank you for listening to this one all the way until the end. And I pray and encouraged you or uplifted you in some way. And I'm truly just honored to get to share Sofia's birth story with you. And I'm sure this is one I'll come back to. And I hope someday sweet Sofia will listen to this and get to hear the story of how she was born. So anyway, thank you guys again. Hope this was so encouraging. And thanks for listening to the end. And I'll be back next week and the next week to continue to talk about birth. And then from there, we'll go back to some businessy type episodes. So thank you guys and God bless you. Bye. If managing your business's finances feels daunting and you typically come to the end of the month not sure how to pay yourself, or if you're doing the business savings thing, quote unquote, right, then I have a free guide for you. Over my 9 years of business, I've learned some financial skills the hard way. And a few years ago, I developed an 8-step process I go through at the end of each month. This process helps me know how my business is doing financially, pay myself well, and allocate money for things like taxes and expenses, and also document notes about the month that'll help me make financial decisions in the future. Again, I've been doing this process since early 2023, and it truly has changed the way I do my business for the better and has helped me ultimately make more money. And I want to help you do the same. So you can grab this 8-step process literally for free at elizabethmccravey.com/profit. There's a whole PDF guide for you there that you can download and go through for free. That's elizabethmccravey.com/profit.